Good evening, everybody, and a warm welcome to Rushcliffe Borough Council's Governance Scrutiny Group meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube to a sizable audience, and a recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information, England, Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, post on social media, or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. And may I remind councillors to please switch off your mobile phones and switch off your microphones when you are not speaking. Thank you. So I'd like to move to the first of all, welcome to our officers and external presenters. But I'd like to move to the first item on the agenda, apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Plenter, Councillor Regan, Councillor Wells and Councillor Orme. And substituting, we have Councillor Chaplin, Councillor Mason and Councillor Solomon.
Lovely, thank you. Obviously, that's a slightly higher number of substitutions than we normally have, but I do know that those not here are all away for very good reason, some work related, some health related, and I think it just does show that, you know, sometimes we have to have things outside of the council do sometimes have to take priority, basically. But anyway, so thank you for those people substituting. Are there, item number 2 on the agenda, are there any declarations of interest? So item 3, the minutes of the meeting on the 19th of September 2024. Has anyone got any comments on the minutes, or can we sign them off as a true record? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to just give a quick update on the external audit and the statement of accounts. Just had a note from the auditors, I think it was yesterday. So look at it. So it's to do with note 13 at page 3 from the minutes. The auditors have informed me that they've now got assurance from the county council pension fund. So hopefully everything, the I's will be dotted and the T's crossed fairly soon. So the account should all be signed off hopefully before Christmas.
That's very good news. So thank you for that. Item 4 on the agenda is the Regulation of Investigative Powers Act, shortened to REPA, and that's going to be presented by Sarah Pregon. So Sarah, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. You'll find the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act RIPA review report from pages 9 to 12 of your agenda, and the revised policies at pages 13 to 43. This is an annual report to enable members to scrutinise the Council's use of activity covered by this legislation. As a local authority, the Council can only undertake directed surveillance where such activity has been authorised in accordance with RIPA. This covers covert cameras, covert observations, and use of undercover officers conducting surveillance. Authorisation can only be granted where it is necessary for the purposes of preventing or detecting crime or for preventing disorder, and only then when criminal offences carry a sentence of at least 6 months imprisonment, or for offences of selling alcohol or tobacco to children, and it must be proportionate. If authorised by the Council, there must also be judicial approval before any activity can take place. You'll see that there are only certain specified officers that can authorise such activity on behalf of the Council, namely the Chief Executive and the relevant Director and Head of Service. I am the senior responsible officer for overseeing the process, keeping records of any approvals, ensuring training is delivered to officers, reviewing the Council's policy and bringing an annual report to members. In the period between the last report, which was brought to this committee in November 23, there have been no authorisations for directed surveillance by this Council. Even though there have been no authorisations, I am still required to bring this report to members in accordance with the Statutory Code of Practice and also our policy document and to review our policy on an annual basis. You will see that I have revised the policy slightly to update the codes of practice, which have been updated by government, to provide clarity in some of the definitions, and also updated Part 3 relating to communications data to include reference to the need for judicial approval. The recommendations are for you to consider and note the information contained within my report, and also to endorse the revised policy. And I'd be happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Turn your microphone. Okay, any questions, Councillor? Yes.
There weren't going to be any.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, there haven't been any, which could mean two things. It could mean that there haven't been any, or that they haven't been reported. How do we know that our processes for making sure that all the reporting is happening are, all in order?
So I think there's two ways that that's probably monitored in terms of management of staff. So making sure that staff are not undertaking activity that they should not be doing without the appropriate authorisation in place, and also by ensuring that relevant officers receive the training that's required. And you'll see that I've referred to some training stats in the body of the report. This was actually a new training module that was only introduced as of the beginning of October, and the take up for that training has been very good so far. So that's something that I will monitor and ensure is completed by officers who need to have that training.
Happy with that, Councillor Thomas? Of course you can answer another question. Ask another question.
And the other thing was about the revised policy. It's not a track changes version you've given us, is it? I don't think. I just think it would be, in general, it's a lot easier to scan something that's been changed if you're given a big pile of papers, if it's a track changes version.
I fully appreciate the comment there. I suppose the reason why that hasn't been provided, one is to keep the length of the papers down. So sometimes with policy documents, they can change quite dramatically. So for example, the Part 3 part here, that has been a new revision. So if it was track change, it would make the document even longer. And that's why what I've tried to do in the report is to outline what those changes are. The changes that have been done have been to comply with the updated code of practice. And as I said, just one or two definitions where I felt there was further clarity that would be needed to help officers who have got to review and apply the policy.
Okay, happy with that?
Well, that's fine, but I just find it easier if I can see what's changed.
Right.
Because I take the point that it might make papers longer, but there's less of it I've got to read.
So I guess it's a reasonable suggestion would be just to put in, obviously only one thing's been updated, is actually to, if you like, in the same way we would with the Constitution, have this is the policy and here's the change in highlighted change. Yeah, if we do that for future, we can do that. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Obviously, this is we're approving something that already exists. We debated it a year ago. It's not about what we think of surveillance. It's something that's has to be in place so that should it ever be needed, then we're prepared and we're properly trained and we're capable of actually doing what we're supposed to do. So I think the policy in that sense does that for us. So basically the recommendation is that we consider the notes and information contained within this report regarding the council's use of REPA powers, and endorse the updates to the council's REPA policy at Appendix 1 to this report. So I'm judging by the lack of questions, or obviously other than Councillor Thomas, that we're all happy to endorse that, and hopefully so is Councillor Thomas. Thank you. So item 5 on the agenda is Capital Investment Strategy Q2 report, and that's being presented tonight by Marie Heald. So Marie, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. The report starts with a look at the economic forecast. Inflation. The consumer price index rose by 2.3% in the 12 months to October. up from 1.7% in September, and is forecast to be around 2.5% at the end of the year. Interest rates are expected to be higher for longer. So although interest rates fell this month to 4.75%, no change is expected when the Monetary Policy Committee meet next on the 19th of December. Forecasts vary, but our Treasury advisors are expecting interest rates to be 4.25% in the spring, falling to 3.75% by this time next year. Unemployment, the rate rose slightly from 4% in October to 4.3% in November. It is expected to be 4.1% next year and 4% in 2026. So overall, the economy is looking more stable. Investment income, paragraphs 4.4 to 14. The council budgeted to receive just over £1 million in interest receipts this year, and is expected to exceed this with current projections 1.9 million. This is because most of our short-term investments, particularly money market funds, are exceeding the budget rate of 4.5%, and the council is also holding larger investment balances. Overall, the council achieved an average interest rate of 4.88%, slightly lower than Q1. Appendix A shows a full list of investments held at the end of September. The council holds just over 92 million in investments. 51 million of this is held in relation to Section 106 and SIL agreements. 39 million is held in short-term fixed investments which vary in duration. Interest earned will be dependent on the investment when the investment was made. The council holds a diversified portfolio to protect itself from interest rate risk. Paragraph 4.7 shows the range of investments over the different time periods. The profile is similar to last year's, although investment balances are higher, 92 million compared with 76 million this time last year. The council continues to consider green investments that are compliant with the council's strategy. We currently hold a Better World Cautious Fund with CCLA and an ESG liquidity account with HSBC. 4.10 highlights the fluctuation in the fair value of the diversified funds. Appendix B shows a drop in value of approximately 770,000 since initial investment. These funds are volatile and affected by political and economic instability. The statutory override, which ensures that this loss doesn't impact on the revenue accounts, is only in place until March next year. There is uncertainty around what will happen after this date. The risk to the council has been mitigated by appropriations to a pooled funds reserve, which currently has a balance of 1.2 million. Paragraph 4.14 looks at the asset benchmark. The projected credit balance indicates an excess of reserves and working capital over borrowing, highlighting the fact that the council has no need to externally borrow over the medium term. Other prudential indicators can be found in Appendix C. Capital. There is a projected underspend of around 4 million due to reprofiling of leisure centre expenditure to future years and the acquisition of the Traveller site and post-opening enhancements to Bingham Leisure Hub and the crematorium not being committed. The expected investment position at the end of the year is 83.5 million, higher than budgeted due to reprofiling of the capital programme and Section 106 monies. Borrowing. In light of healthy investment balances, the council does not envisage externally borrowing during the medium term. The CFR, the council's underlying need to borrow, is anticipated to be 7.6 million after deducting MRP. The proportion of financing cost to net revenue stream indicator shows the proportion of net income that is used to pay for financing costs. The projected actual is minus 4.3%, the minus indicating that interest receipts exceed financing costs in the form of MRP. Commercial investments are covered in paragraph 4.25 onwards. The council minimises its exposure to risk by spreading its investments across sectors. This can be seen in graph 2. Investment income from commercial activity currently accounts for 11.9% of the council's total income. Appendix C shows income from commercial and service investment as a percentage of net revenue streams. This is projected to be 11.1%. The next training session for members will be with Arlene Close on the 17th of December. So to conclude, interest rates are expected to stay higher for longer, having a positive effect on returns over the medium term. The economic outlook is generally positive, with the UK economy forecast to grow 2% next year. Pooled funds can be unpredictable with prices subject to fluctuations based on economic conditions. This can have a negative effect on the capital value. The statutory override currently in place is due to end 31st of March 2025, so the council will continue to monitor the situation and take advice from our Treasury advisors. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Questions? Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
I'll say it again. Thank you, Mary. Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. Got a couple of questions. First one is paragraph 4.9. You talk about liquidity achieved, and I'm just wondering what is an acceptable level of liquidity that we should be aiming for.
I mean, to be honest, there isn't sort of an acceptable minimum. You just need enough sort of monies to be able to sort of pay your creditors' bills and things like that. So as long as you're managing your working capital on a day-to-day basis, you know, you can sort of invest there afterwards.
Is it a rough percentage of what?
The sort of rule of thumb we tend to use is around £10 million for working capital. So that's then
For an authority.
yeah, for us, yeah.
Okay. On 416, paragraph 416, I tried to get my brain around that, and there is certain figures there are explained, but there was reference to other adjustments of 2.407 million, and my reading of 416 did not give me any indications of what those other adjustments might be. Maybe my misreading, but if I could have some clarification on that, please.
Well, sometimes these reports you have to sometimes read some of the other reports. So if you read our cabinet report, it does explain in more detail. I suspect that will be the not just carry forwards, but sometimes we bring forward from when we advance, do some advance work. So, for example, if we need a refuse freighter quicker than we anticipate, we'll adjust the programme the other way rather than just carrying it forward.
It's in addition to the budget coming from somewhere. Okay, I'll read the cabinet report.
It's due out, I think, for cabinet. Well, actually, you'll see it in the cog papers as well if you want to look at the cog papers. But it's a riveting read.
That's okay. So, Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I have had an email conversation with Mr. Linfield about the section 106, so it's given me quite a bit more information. So we're currently holding, as I understand it, about £50 million in still in section 106. And so my question was about, there's a bit that implies that we lend it to ourselves so that we don't have to borrow externally, capital externally. Is that right?
That facility is available, so it's what we call internal borrowing. But because when you look at the size of our investments anyway, we've not had to resort to necessarily using that facility. But that is, I think the words I've used was that it's a sensible way of doing things is to use the cash you've got rather than necessarily going and incurring extra borrowing costs through unnecessary borrowing. Clearly, when the Section 106 is due to be repaid, then the money would have to be found, at which point you would borrow.
Yes, I mean, I think my understanding of the Section 106 was that it was in like separate shoe boxes, but I'm not saying that what you're saying is not sensible. It's just that I had to challenge the way I thought of it. So can you tell me how the interest on the Section 106 is calculated and ready for when it's paid out, as it were? Is that set by the inflation index, or is it set by how much we make on our investments?
Well, it'll be defined within the various agreements. Don't worry, you can. Well,
Yeah, basically, some of the older Section 106 agreements will have something written into there. More recently, we don't do that. So what we basically do is we take a monthly average of the interest rates that we've been getting on all the money market funds and take an average and apply that to the Section 106.
Does that make sense, Councillor Thomas? Obviously, there's always been, and I know you've questioned it a lot in the past, there's always been a high level of 106 money there because we're waiting for people to draw it down, basically, and we're holding it for them.
Yeah, I suppose just a reminder, really, actually, when I do the budget sessions, and you might probably don't recall actually, but I'll just remind you that if you remember, I do two slides, one that shows our cash balances with Section 106s and one without, because in reality we know that's not our money going forward. So.
Yeah, I think my point is really, though, that because we do have it as reserves and we can use it for internal borrowing, it does mean that it reduces our liability for external borrowing. And so when we're congratulating ourselves on not having to borrow, as we do frequently in council meetings, I think it needs to be recognised that's partly because we're holding so much money that other people are not spending for infrastructure. And the reason for that is there's so much development going on in the borough. And so we're in quite a fortunate position, possibly, compared to other councils.
Well, my challenge back will be we've got at least £30 million of headroom anyway, so irrespective of the Section 106, and that's good through good financial management.
Yes, Councillor Birch.
Yes, a separate question, is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just a quick one. Could you define what you mean by medium term with regards to borrowing? So there's no need to borrow in the medium term.
Yeah, we take the medium term to be the 5-year programme.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. Just a question following on from the interest that is received. So you work it out as an average. So there's interest going on to the 106 money. Is that then proportioned for each project, or do you have the ability to borrow across or change the proportion calculated if, say, a project project A is significantly increased in cost, whereas project B hasn't increased as much? So whether you have the flexibility to shuffle the money around, or is it absolutely proportionally and that's it?
So basically, as Pete mentioned, and if we start the report, basically the 1.9 million that we're actually making in the current year interest is on our own monies. That's when we've actually paid out net of monies that we're paying on the Section 106s. Our current balances are 91 million. The Section 106 is only account for 51 million of that. So we've got a mass amount of money ourselves. The current borrowing levels that we currently own along the CFR is only 7 million. So it puts it into perspective. We're not really using the Section 106 money. It is there should we ever need it, but we're not using it. And the way the Section 106s work is if the money's still there from one year to the next, I'd put an annual increase on it. And if some money's due out, I'll calculate the interest at the point that we make that payment out, and I'll do it to that date. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fairly clear now, because it is in the report that the money we're earning in interest isn't including the 106 money, so we're not counting it twice. So, yeah. No. Okay. Any other questions on that from anyone? A couple of comments I was going to make was I think every year we see quite a bit of a change in the profiling of the spend, because it's all about capital expenditure coming in. But could you just go into the profiling of the leisure spend that you mentioned a little bit more, because that was quite a big chunk of money, wasn't it? I can't remember which paragraph it was, but you mentioned it along with the traveller site, and I know the traveller site was about £1 million set aside for that, and I think we've discussed that before. But it was I don't think I'd sort of picked up on the fact that we've got about 4 million in the carrying over basically into future years, I think is what you said, and that's on profiling of leisure spend. Do you know? Can you answer any of that, Pete, or Don?
Yeah, well, perhaps I can come back to it in a minute when I look at it.
Yeah, okay. If you can have a look at it and let us know.
Paragraph 416.
Was it? Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. Sorry.
Well, I will reiterate what I said earlier. The actual detail in terms of the amounts are in the cabinet report that I referred to in the COG report. So, but quite happy to furnish you with that information afterwards.
Yeah, I think it was more. I think the way I was looking at it, because I know we've been doing Cotgrave as we speak, are we not? And I know Keyworth's been delayed a bit, but I didn't realise it was sort of it just seemed a big amount of money. If it's Keyworth and Cotgrave that's causing that reprofiling.
Yeah, but you've also got things like the traveller site, which is £1 million. So I'm not going to sort of guess the figure, but
no, okay.
The figures are detailed in the cabinet report.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I just picked it up because I hadn't noticed it before. Okay. So if that's all the questions anyone's got to answer, everyone's happy with their answers. Again, the recommendation is that we review and comment as necessary on the capital investment strategy update, and I think we're all satisfied that we've done that. Everyone happy? We move on. So item number 6 is the update on the Redmond review of public sector audit, and that's presented by Mr. Linfield, please.
Perhaps I was going to ask Charlotte to do it.
Right.
She's done it earlier. So.
Okay. Are you?
Yeah. So well, I will talk to this because obviously there's some members here that weren't at the training. So but apologies if there's a bit of repetition for those that have from the training we had earlier. So the report focuses on 3 areas. So there's an update from the Redmond review. One thing to emphasise: the Redmond review was sort of recommended, and there's not all of it necessarily agreed by government. And it's not sort of statutory in terms of what it says, but there's sort of good practice there. But one of the key recommendations is for this group really is one of the issues that's covered is whether the group would support having an independent member. Now, this was brought a few years ago. We considered this, and at the time the group rejected the notion of having an independent member. I think they thought there was enough expertise and experience within the group so that an independent member wasn't required. So perhaps we can perhaps have a quick discussion and confirm whether the group's got a view on whether they feel an independent member would be good for the group and good in terms of governance, which is what it's there for. You know, it's to provide that extra experience. In fact, to be honest, the challenge is obviously going to be attracting someone as well to actually to become a member, which is an independent member, because as you will see in the report, the pay is not the best. It's fair to say, but it's whether the principal, at least the principal, do you support the principal, and if you do, then we take a report to full council. It will require a change in the constitution to have an independent member on this particular group. So it's really just if they've got views and perhaps listen to views, and maybe perhaps through the chair, perhaps a show of hands and support or otherwise.
I'd say, Councillor Mason, you were involved in the debate last time, I believe.
Yes. How would the independent member of this group be how would it be chosen and who by? Would it be the same as last time? Are we thinking something different this time?
It'd be we'd be drawing up a person specification and effectively a job description. It will be advertised, and there will be, if you like, an interview process to make sure we get the correct person. I'd expect that probably involve myself, probably the chair of this group as well, that would undertake that particular process.
I've been on other committees that have had independents, and actually sometimes they have been a real bonus and come and look at it from a different point of view than from us councillors that tend to look at the same things each year as they come up, and to get a fresh view. So I wouldn't really be against it at all. No.
Go on, Councillor Birch, well, you go first. You come first in the alphabet.
Yeah, so my 2 cents on this is I would support the recommendation. Minimal cost to the council. I've sat on a committee, the standards committee, that does have independent people, and it was a positive. It does give a different perspective. I think if it's recommended as best practice, I think we should do it. I don't see any major reasons why we shouldn't do it, so I would vote for it.
Councillor Calvert.
Yep, I shall just repeat really what Councillor Burke just said. I would support it. It's recommended in this Redmond review, as a way I read it, and I think it would help us get through the fog of some of these reports. Somebody who raised questions with.
Yeah. Can I ask Charlotte a question on this, if I may? Obviously, you've perhaps had experience of the qualifications. The question I had for Pete was, obviously it's someone who's got to be qualified to help give us the right advice as well. So, where would you put? Could you sort of say a bit about what the qualifications might be, or is that down the road, do you think?
I think what you'd expect really is somebody that's either got that chartered accountancy qualification or someone that's got experience in financial audit, particularly. That would be really what you're after.
Okay.
And yeah, well, it's not for me to say, but it is recommended best practice.
Okay. Councillor Thomas first, please.
I would strongly support having an independent member. In fact, I would question why we're only looking at one, when we could perhaps be looking at 2 or even 3, but certainly 2, to give certainly more continuity. It takes a while to get your eye in, I think, even if you've got somebody qualified, to get the continuity between meetings. If you've got 2 people, you go through the recruitment process once for 2 people, and you get 2 people on board, then they will drop out one by one for various reasons, and you won't get left with a gap. So my suggestion would be that we went for 2 not one.
Okay. I think that would be something to look at further down the line when we've, because the recommendation is one person, and I think, I'm not in. I would rather have someone on board and see how it goes. I think when I look back in the minutes, so 3 years ago, I think it was when they considered it. It's not really all that clear, other than that the committee at that time felt that they had the right qualifications within the committee to not require an external member. I don't know how close the vote was. I did say earlier, Councillor Mason was on that committee then, and quickly waded in with her full support for having an independent member. So I'm certainly happy to, perhaps consider that in the future. But I think at this point in time, let's stick with one, shall we? Councillor Mason.
The other thing was that the independent member doesn't have a vote at the end of anything that we have to, if we have to have a vote. So, and just to make that clear.
Okay.
Just on the point, if you have more than one, I think as council, you still have responsibility yourselves, and obviously you start watering down the numbers of councillors versus the independent members, and I don't think that's necessarily the way that we should be going. But I do think as well, we'll certainly try and get one, and I suppose see how that goes to start with, and just trying to attract someone, and B, retain someone. So I do know some local authorities not too far away from here have they struggle to recruit, and even when they've recruited, they've struggled to retain, which I know, I appreciate that. But,
well, I think Mr. Linfield did ask us to do it by a show of hands. I'm pretty sure that we've got a majority that would like to see us going forward. Councillor Wheeler's nodding his head. So I think, can we just say can ask those in favour of actually getting an independent member and starting the process? So there we go. I think that looks like unanimous, basically. So I think we do go down that process. I think there are possibly some pitfalls we'll find out as we go down the process, but I think it could be a good thing for the committee. And as Councillor Mason says, the person you bring in doesn't have a vote when it comes to decisions, but they can certainly give us their opinions, which hopefully will be useful.
Yeah. So to be clear, you're supportive, and there'll be a report that will go to full council, and that will, obviously it'll have to be supported at full council.
Yeah. Councillor Wheeler.
Just very briefly, adding what Peter said earlier on, the challenge will be finding the right person. They ain't going to fall out of the trees, are they? It will be very difficult, and that's something we'll have to look at. Obviously, if our attempts to recruit the right person doesn't work, but that's for another day. But we've got to go through the process, as you just explained, Peter, and so as the chairman as well.
Yeah. So basically, that what we're saying as a scrutiny group is that we'd like that to go forward to full council as a recommendation.
Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, I'll just carry on. So that was probably the main part of this report, really. But the rest of the report, so it does focus about the revenue review, and we touched on that earlier. So in paragraphs 4.5.1 to 4.5.5, focusing on issues like market stability, including fee structures, publishing dates of accounts, system leadership options, enhancing the local audit function. So that's really the independent member part of that, and improving transparency of local authority accounts. And as some of these issues we were touched on at the previous session, but I do appreciate certainly when you look at the accounts, we do look to try and give you training on that as well, normally before we present the accounts, just to help you, but we do appreciate they can be impenetrable for accountants. I don't know about people on this committee, so but anyway, so we're trying, obviously we try and make that as easy as normally when we do the covering report actually with the accounts, we do try and explain some of the key messages that come through the accounts. And then paragraph 4.6 and appendix B has a paper on the effective scrutiny of treasury management. So that's like SIPFA's self-assessment form. And that also includes, if you look at page 74, it includes points about the having an independent person as well. So coincidentally, so the paragraph 4.6 really covers the some recommendations in terms of areas that we could perhaps do a bit more ourselves. So suggesting questions that are pertinent to the report that the group may wish to consider doing a bit more of that. Seeking feedback from yourselves on the technical content of reports, and also the Treasury Management Policy Statement, making sure we do include this as part of the capital investment strategy. The independent person on page 63 I'm talking to now, which I've just mentioned, and the request that the group raise questions in advance of the scrutiny meeting. So if you do have any specific questions, without it, I always have to request those. I do get them on occasions. And any suggestions from the group on how to improve reports. So if you've got views on that, it is a difficult balance in that, which I think we spoke on this in the previous session. It's that balance. You can't, unfortunately, we can't please everyone. Some people like a bit more detail, others like less. Then, yeah, if you have a lot of detail, you end up with loads of papers, even more papers, Caris, to look at. But but hopefully we get the right balance. But we do appreciate it. It is a bit of a double-edged sword. So really, if there's any other thoughts or observations,
Councillor Birch.
Yeah, just a quick one regarding the transparency aspect. So that the recommendation is to have a simplified statement at the end of the sort of document to sort of communicate to the public at large what's going on. What specifically is the council doing with that? Who's it been written by? Are we going for a sort of snapshot, or can you give me any more information on that aspect and what the council's doing?
Yeah. When we produce the accounts, and anything we do is normally in accordance with best practice and published by SIPFA. So really we're waiting for more guidance from SIPFA on the sort of thing that they will propose we do. We're not trying to create anything ourselves. We haven't really got the resource to do that anyway. But we're really awaiting. That's one of the things that's really outstanding in terms of what they propose, and it'd be certainly great for the finance team if we could get a much slimmed down version of the statement of accounts. But as I mentioned before, unfortunately, we end up having to follow the Accounting Standards Board and various financial reporting standards, which inhibits our ability to start. We can't just start cutting things out of the accounts, make things easier, because basically the auditors will be telling us to put it back in.
Yes.
So I've got the wrong end of the stick here. I inferred it to mean that the point of the recommendation was to make it more accessible to the public, so there will be a summary rather than actually the actual report itself being condensed, an actual sort of written summary. Have I got that wrong?
You haven't got it wrong. That was what the Redmond review came up with that as a recommendation. What no one's actually come up with yet is what that solution looks like.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Calvert.
I'm looking here at paragraph 451. So it's dealing with a few aspects of the 5, 6, 8, 10, and 11. First of all, the fee structure. I just want to clarify what is meant by scale fees. Is this just the amount we have to pay for the auditing? What does it actually mean? We're talking here about £96,000. So that's the first question. And the second one is the publishing dates, the requirement for local authorities to, over a period of time, to get their accounts in order earlier and earlier. I'm just questioning how realistic that's going to be, bearing in mind how difficult it is for local authorities financially at the moment, and how that would be enforced. That's another query. So those two areas, please.
Well, the scale fee, so basically the PSAA they go out to consultation on scale fees with all the all the local authorities, and then the fifth scale fees are set nationally by the PSAA, and they go out to consultation. In fact, I think I've just received an email only a couple of days ago about the change in the scale fee for next year.
This is paying for what?
So this is the audit fee that we have to pay. So the PSAA have contracted the audits with the firms, and we end up having to pay. Obviously, we're paying the fees to the PSAA, who will do then reimburse the firms.
That's a must benefit.
Sorry, just add on fees. I think we've been reporting for the last few years on the way the fees have been going up, and that's, I think Charlotte touched on it. They did go down by quite a bit when Eric Pickles was the local government minister at the time. They got rid of the audit commission, and that's when all the fees went really down. I think Rushcliffe went to about 35,000 or something at one point. The fees now, have gone, the last few years have been going up, 40,000-50,000 pounds a time. Hopefully now they're plateauing, I would hope, but we'll see.
I think as well, after the Redmond review, part of the action was that the government did put sort of £15 million, I think, into the local government to support that. But going forward, I don't think that's much help, is it?
Yeah, we got a crumb of rebate back, which paid some of it, but other stuff. Then, sorry, on the other point was about the dates. Some councils now effectively are having to have effective qualified opinions on their accounts just to get them closed. For Rushcliffe, we're not in that boat. Our accounts, well, as I mentioned earlier, on time. Probably one of the few councils that are in that position. The intention is, you say getting the dates down to 30th of November 2028, that the actual statutory deadline is the 30th of September. That's a date that they need to be getting to. So I think that just reflects the state of the accounting and audit market, really, for local authorities and audit firms. So if you want a job in audit or something,
yeah, I think actually it's, we are we shouldn't ever become complacent as a council, but we are in an unfortunate position of getting there. Yeah, we already talked earlier that now that the one final bit of our external audit that was missing, that prevents the accounts being signed off, was the pension thing, and that's now been resolved. So we hopefully will be signing them off.
I will say, I wouldn't say it's fortunate. I'd say it's hard work by the team.
Well, yeah. I should have couched it in that language rather than saying. I said we were in a fortunate position thanks to the hard work. Okay. So is everyone, any more questions on that? So we're all happy to put forward the second part of the recommendation.
Just ask a very general question of these folks in front of me. Now, bearing in mind what the Chair's just said and what Peter's also reflecting on, when is it going to change the conditions out there? We're in an unusual situation, thanks, as Peter's rightly said, thanks to a lot of hard work and finance team. But out there, it must be an absolute minefield. There's no sign of any improvement out there, is there? From what I remember the previous presentations, you touched on this before. And so many local authorities not getting accounts signed up and going back years with some of them. So this is just an enormous problem stored up, isn't it? Or am I put something wrong here? Sorry.
Just to sort of reiterate, we're not external auditors, so we for us, but yeah, no, I agree. It is a really difficult situation at the moment. And I think the Redmond review did kind of produce some recommendations that would help, and hopefully now with the implementation of ARGAR and things like that, that will kind of address some of the issues. But I don't know if you've got anything.
No, nothing specific. But yeah, you're right. There is a big challenge from what we see across local authorities. I think Pete summed up quite well by saying quite a few have to take qualified accounts to have them closed off, which kind of emphasises some of the challenges. But I think there's quite a lot of authorities out there that are going through those challenges. So yeah, it's a positive thing from your perspective that you're kind of separate to that, and they are getting signed off in time.
Okay, everyone happy that we move on, accept the recommendations, and accept the report, basically. So normally we would do the work programme last, but there is the internal audit progress report includes some sensitive information, so we're going to do that last. No, not. So we're doing first the work programme. So Mr. Linfield will just take us through that. As I was saying, Charlotte, that's normally the last bit.
I'm afraid there's quite a lot on the next work programme, so unfortunately, Carys, you're going to have a bit to read. Well, I'll do my best with rounding. Actually, then I will add it. There's a correction. It does say work programme twice. There isn't going to be 2 work programme papers in the programme, but it is quite it's quite a busy sort of schedule. There's not a lot else to say, Chair.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, there is plenty on there, but I don't think that's. I think we've had worse before that as well. So probably. So if everyone's happy with the work programme of going forward, then we can move on. In which case, we get to the part which we have the exclusion of the public. So I would like to move that under Regulation 20 of the Local Authorities, Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information, England, Regulations 2012, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act